All right. Welcome, everybody. We are here on a lovely Thursday afternoon to discuss the do's and don'ts of discipline. Welcome, Bridget from Boys Town, Nebraska's Common Sense Parenting. How are you?
I'm great, Susie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Um, well, I think it's a very appropriate time to be talking about discipline when kids are in school, at home, in at home school, half the time, part of the time, all the time. With routines changing so much, I think having your discipline nailed down, like what you often teach parents to do is very, very important.
Thanks.
Wouldn't
I
you agree?
agree. I agree. During this difficult time, having discipline is hard to do, even as parents. We have a difficult time because the routine is always changing and we don't know what's coming. So it can really be a, a very strenuous thing. But we have to kind of think in the day, in the week, try not to overwhelm ourselves and have some options of, routine. So when kids are not going to school, what's the routine for that? And, having that kind of flexible discipline during these very trying and changing times.
Yeah. So I know there's lots of different theories, I guess you would say, on discipline. What types of discipline practices do you recommend, and are the Boys Town model kind of based off of?
Well, the Boys Town model is based off of a positive discipline approach. I feel that this is the best approach, especially during these times. Positive discipline is a kind of a responsive approach to raising children. In other words, unlike a strict or an indulgent discipline approach, we focus on communication, setting reasonable rules and limits for children, at the same time being willing to be flexible and open to seeing a child's point of view. So communication is key here, setting those limits and being flexible given the child's needs in the situation.
And why is something like that so effective, do you think?
Well, I work with parents from all over the country, all over the world, and even parents with diverse backgrounds would say that this positive approach works best for them because it allows you that flexibility. If you're very rigid or strict, then that's the only tool you have. It's like it's a hammer and everything's a nail. You really don't get that flexibility to be able to change it up depending on the situation, the child, the age, on and on. If you're too indulgent, really you don't, your kid's telling you versus you're teaching them. And so this positive approach, this responsive approach, really gives parents a step-by-step way of dealing with different children, giving their different ages and their different situations. So it's really all about that communication. It's about the setting expectations that are reasonable, not only for the child, but for the parent. And then being flexible, firm but flexible in following through on those expectations that you have for your kids.
And it works. We know this from research. It's research proven that this method is provides good outcomes for kids and families, right?
Exactly. Common Sense Parenting, Boys Town's Common Sense Parenting program has been researched for over 30 years. As far as I'm concerned, we're probably one of the best research programs because Boys Town is constantly having itself be assessed by our clients. So by the parents, and parents are evaluating the service by outside observers who come in and observe the program. We have a whole entire research department that researches and documents our information. So we're constantly getting feedback about, our pre and post. We do that to make sure that it's doing what we say it's going to do, and it does. So that's really been our experience with using this type of approach.
So I think that's a good way to set this up so that people know that we know what we're talking about, and Bridget knows stuff, and not just according to Bridget, but research, it actually makes a difference and works. So let's start with a really basic discipline question. So if my child is misbehaving and I'm telling them not to do something and they're not listening, what do I do?
Well, if your child is misbehaving and you're telling them not to do something and they continue to do it, then you have to follow through on what you're saying. You know, so to speak, words are cheap. So if you tell a kid to do something and then they continue to do what they want to do or just ignore you, then now you have to follow through on what you said you were going to, you know, what the limit was. You said, I want you to stop doing X, Y, and Z. And if you don't stop doing X, Y, and Z, this is going to occur. Then you need to follow through on that. Now make that reasonable. Don't give a consequence or give an instruction that is not reasonable or set an expectation that is not reasonable. So really make sure that the expectation you're giving your kid is reasonable for their age and their capability, number one. And then mean what you say and say what you mean. If you said this is reasonable for this child and they should be able to do this particular thing, then follow through on that limitation and follow up with them. If you go in the room and you see that their homework's not done or you see that they're not going to their online class, then you need to address that situation right away. Immediately is the best thing. Don't wait for it to continue to happen 1, 2, 3, 15 times and then respond. The first time you see that, respond to it and share with your kid what the limitation is again, and then let them know what's the outcome of their behavior, what's going to happen now because they've made this choice.
Yeah. I say I definitely struggle with that first one of um, putting in a punishment or something right after the first time they do something. I'm always kind of like, oh, it's just one time, we'll talk about it, and but then it usually happens occasionally, one or two more times, and then we end up having to discipline for it. So I don't know, I struggle with putting in that discipline right when the first strike happens.
Right.
Is that more
Am I
about then
supposed
setting expectations on the front end?
say that again? I didn't hear you.
Well, I was wondering, is that more of an issue with just setting the expectations on the front end and making sure kids know what's expected and what's going to happen before?
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Setting that clear expectation. So, did you say it clearly? Was it concise? Or did you ask the question, would you go clean your room? The kid is like, no, no, that's a question. I don't want to really do that. Would you take out the trash? So if you're going to give an instruction, then give one. I want you to go to your room and clean it up and check back in the next 15 minutes whether you're done or not. That's very clear and concise. So set a clear expectation of what you want kids to do, right? And then follow through on that expectation. Not 2 hours later. I would probably go up to the room and say, or have, when this timer goes off, have a kid check back with me. So either you check in with them or they check back with you and see how they're doing. That's the other part of communication, is that interaction that we should be having. Not screaming from downstairs, but go to the child or have them come to you and check on how whatever task you gave them to do. And then you'll know how to follow up. So first, make sure that your expectation is clear, appropriate for the child's age and their ability, and then follow through. Check back on that communication. Are they doing what you asked them to do? Then you can be able to give that positive encouragement along the way. In 15 minutes, a kid reappears and says, well, I'm doing it, but I'm really having problems with this or that. And you can say, well, okay, great for checking back with me. That was wonderful. You checked back on time, and that's great. Great for you. Okay, let's go see what you're having struggles with, and I'll give you some advice, or I'll help you if I can. Okay, so then you go back up and check with the kids. So that's about this whole communication, this back and forth that we should be having with kids, and not just waiting till it goes wrong to begin to berate or nag them or say how dissatisfied you are with their behavior, but really being very proactive by setting the clear expectation, setting it that it's reasonable, checking on that expectation, and giving positive feedback along the way.
Yeah. And I think, another thing that I always think is interesting when you talk is assuming that the child knows what they're supposed to do. So when I say go clean your room, I know how to clean a room and I know how I want a room cleaned. But I often assume that my child knows that. And then when they don't do it to how I want them to do it, I kind of miss that step of teaching, that expectation on the front end. What else? So cleaning a room, what are some other things that you see parents, not really teaching kids how to do them on the front end?
Yeah, demonstrating the thing, saying do as I say and not as I do. So if you say to a kid, go clean your room and my room's a mess, kids are not always listening to what we're saying. They're watching what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
They're role models. So you'll want to make sure that you're doing the expectation that you're trying to have your kids do. And I know at times, my room might be a mess and my kid's like, well, your room's a mess. And I say, I totally understand that. You're right. So I'll work on my room and you need to work on your room. So right now I'm giving you an instruction. I need you to look at me and say, okay, and then go do what I've asked you to do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, kids will probably bring up your shortcomings. That's fine. I usually accept responsibility for my issues. But at the same time, I do try to set that role model for them. Is this my expectation? Then I need to follow through on that as well.
Got it. So it's funny, we've got a lot of questions about teens and a lot of questions about toddlers. I don't think either of us are surprised by that when it comes to a topic on discipline. So here's one. How can I effectively discipline my teen when they think they know everything?
Well, understand that teenagers, that's really normal for a teenager to think that they know everything. I was a teenager once, and I'm pretty sure my parents said the same thing. But here's the thing, having that open line of communication, even when your kid thinks they know everything, is really important. And not being judgmental during this time. And kids are really trying to find their way and get that independence and, figure things out on their own, but still having that door open up that I'm here for you. I'll listen to you. I'll consider your point of view. I have my point of view, but I'll hear you out. And so when I kept that door open, when my kids were going through those difficult times of being teenagers, I think that was really helpful for them to want to come back and talk to me when they really needed to talk to me about things. So if you begin to say to kids, well, you don't know everything, you need to listen to me, and kind of shutting them down, then they won't come back to you. So keep the lines of communication open. Teach children how, especially teens, how to problem solve in front of you. If they come to you with this problem, instead of telling them the answer, say, okay, let's walk through, like in our Boys Town Common Sense parenting classes, parents learn about what we call the SOTUS. It's a problem solving strategy. And so you can also find that online on our parenting.org site. Have kids walk through that with you. If you know everything, cool. Walk through this SOTUS and show me that you can solve this problem on your own. And I'm just here to support you. I think you can do it. Let's just walk through that. And they might say, oh, this sounds dumb. You can say, well, it might, but let's try it. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, we'll try something else.
Yeah, I always think too, it's, when you've got kids that are kind of learning that how to problem solve and how to handle a tough situation, oftentimes I will kind of speak out loud when I'm trying to figure something out so that, my kids can hear, I don't just know what to do when something like this happens. I weigh the positives, I weigh the negatives, I figure out what the possible outcomes are. And kind of doing that audibly so that they can hear, I think also just is another way to teach.
I agree with you totally. Showing them again by your modeling, by your example, that you walk through things as well. And having a tool like the SOTUS gives kids that step-by-step way. We have that critical thinking. We've been around for a while. We've been using our critical thinking skills, but teaching a child how to do that can be daunting to a parent. So having the step-by-step SOTUS strategy could be really very helpful to parents and to kids.
Yep. And we'll set a link on the Facebook Live here to that SOTUS, which is a wonderful tool to teach kids to use, especially to sit down with them, like Bridget said, and weigh the options and go through things when they're working on a problem. Yeah. Especially when you get to those teenage years. Now, for a toddler, that might not be the easiest thing to go through. So let's talk about toddlers a little bit. Let's talk about things like timeout and tantrums. How do you handle a tantrum, Bridget?
Right. So if you're trying to put a child in timeout and they're having a tantrum, my advice to you is to stop for a moment trying to put them in timeout and just try to get them calm. Trying to give it a consequence while they're out of control is like throwing gasoline on a fire. Okay. So what you want to do is let the little kid, the little toddler, go to their calm down spots, to calm down. Okay, once they're soothed themselves, they took their deep breath, they said they're mad, they kind of got themselves calmed down. Then you can help let them come out of their calm down spot and then begin again. You describe what they were doing, tell them what you want them to do. They follow through on that, great. They don't, well, then that's more teaching that you'll need to do. That doesn't mean that timeout goes away. If you can, get them calmed down and they can show you, here, just sit right here. And then we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long it takes. And then they can get out of timeout. Timeout also, you want to make sure you're using timeout with a child who has appropriate age for that particular strategy. Sometimes you're doing it too young. And the child just thinks timeout is a game and running away from it is fun. And watching you get crazy is also fun.
So when mom loses her mind. That's what timeout is.
Exactly. You don't want to teach children about timeout ahead of time. You want them to know why it's there, how it works, how do I get out of there, what should I do to be able to get out of a timeout. And you don't want to teach children how to self-soothe, how to calm themselves, and to know that children are going to get upset, especially toddlers. They're going to lose it. That's just part of being a toddler. And parents shouldn't get overwhelmed, like why is this happening? That's just part of being a toddler. I don't have all the language yet or the ability to control my emotions, so I'm going to have these meltdowns. So what should parents do when children are out of control is the bigger question here. Versus our children, what you should do to a child who's having a meltdown. Let them have it. Now, what am I doing while this kid is having this meltdown? Am I screaming and yelling and threatening them? Or am I trying to calm myself down, modeling to them how I'm going to be calm, okay? And taking care of me so I can take care of them. And then once they are calm, I return to teaching. So they know that this limit is here. It is not moving because you had a little tantrum. It is still here. You still have to deal with it. It's like the big white elephant in the room. It's not going anywhere just because you're screaming and yelling. So right. When you calm down, here it is again. And so when you get that boundary there and that expectation, kids will learn, okay, I just need to sit in this chair. My mom is going to put the timer on, and then it's going to be all over because that's how we practice it. Okay, let me try it now.
And it's so hard that first, it's just one of those big first parenting challenges where, your sweet kid is just going crazy and not listening and you're not sure what to do. But if you're patient and you take the time to really get it right, it helps so much in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're proactive parents really struggle less than reactive parents who wait for their child to be in those crisis situations. So proactive parents are practicing with kids ahead of time how to take the deep breath, how to use their words, how to relax their body so that when they do get in those situations where they're very frustrated and they want what they want and it's not happening, they know how to take the deep breath when their mommy prompts them. Take the deep breath. They don't want to, but they do it anyway because out of habit, they practice with their mom or their dad morning, noon, and night how to do this strategy. So I would really suggest parents to be very proactive, regardless of whether they have a tot or a teen.
Very good advice. How do you get a dog to stop barking, Bridget? That's
put him outside. No,
that's what I know. So we just got another question in. How do I handle talking back and disrespect and the rude tone of voice from my teenage daughter?
Yeah, so this is the time during our kids' teens that they sometimes get very rude and disrespectful. They sometimes pick that up from their friends or watching shows or just being testy during this time. I really don't allow kids to do that. And so as soon as they have that kind of tone in their voice, I say, okay, you just had that tone in your voice. I want you to repeat that again and use the tone I'm using with you right now. So you can ask me, Mom, can I go to my room? Why don't you try that again? So I have just have them repeat it. And if you let them get away with that, they'll just keep doing it and up it a notch the next time they talk to you. So I just really don't let that slide. I just address it in a very respectful way. So I'm modeling to my kids how I want to be talked to by talking to them that way. And then I have them repeat what they just said or in a more appropriate way that they want to leave instead of what they might have mumbled or said under their breath to me. So I would just have them repeat that and hold them to that. If they tell you, no, I don't want to do that, you can just tell them, well, it looks like you need some time to calm down and we'll come back to this. And I do. I'm like a broken record. I return to that issue because they're going to get calm. They're going to get hungry. I've got a refrigerator. They want to go places. And like, as soon as they ask me for something, I just say, okay, yes, you really do. Parents really do have a lot more power than they think they do. So I would strongly suggest they use that in a good way, in a teaching way. But when kids the teen does get calmed down, they want something, their technology is not free in my house. You have to earn it. I don't go around taking things away from kids. They have to earn the things that they want. So definitely, if they want to use those things, speaking to me in a respectful way is how you get that.
Yep. Let's work right into my next question, which is let's talk about positive and negative consequences. And the difference between them and how do you use them when it comes to discipline?
Well, we see at Boys Town, we see positive and negative consequences simply as motivators, as teaching tools. Okay. And positive and negative consequences just follow behavior and will increase or decrease that behavior that they're following. That's how we see it. So positive consequences are very powerful and they will increase any behavior that they follow. So you want to make sure that they don't follow negative behavior. Okay. And negative consequences will decrease behavior they follow over time. A little weaker tool. So you want to be consistent about using that reasonable negative consequence. So the thing is that kids will learn, okay, if I do this behavior, this is something I like and it happens. Okay, I keep doing that. And while this is a behavior that I do my mom doesn't like, oh, that thing that I don't like happens after that. Oh, I don't want to have that, so I'll avoid that. So you want them to consistently feel that. You want them to understand, okay, this is what I should do because I'm motivated to do that. And this is what I want to stay away from because I don't want to deal with that. All right. So once you've consistently, and we sometimes use joy and job jars just to teach parents the ability to be consistent. All right. To follow through on consequences. So we create these things. I think I have some here, little joy and job jar. I don't know if you guys can see these things.
Yeah.
And you just put these, you just put little motivators in there, either positive or negative. And then when a kid does some behavior, I can just automatically say, pick something out of the job jar, because you just rolled your eyes and talked back to me when I told you to take out the trash. Okay, right. And then when they take out the trash, great. You took out the trash without arguing and you fed the dog. Why don't you pick something out of the joy jar? Wonderful. There you go. Yeah. And then it's a consistency, consequences that are consistent and are reasonable and they follow the appropriate behavior work. So you want to make sure that consequences also are appropriate in size. If they're too big, you can't enforce them. If they're too small, nobody cares. Okay. If they're not important to the child, that kid doesn't care. So you might, you go into your house, Susie, and the kids, they're supposed to be doing their homework. Let's say that's it. They're supposed to be doing their homework. One kid's watching TV. One kid's playing on a video game. One kid is talking on the phone. And you say, okay, no TV tonight for any of you. Well, that's only important to that one child. The other kid still has the video game. Another kid's stuck on the phone. They're like, I still have my phone. So you want to make sure the consequence is important to the child. And that is different for every kid. So finding out what motivates that kid is also a key thing.
Yeah, so, I think that's so true. And you don't, your kids, you know which kids a positive consequence is going to be spending time with mom and which kids are going to be a positive consequences time alone in your room by yourself, and it's very, very different, I think, for all kids when it comes to positive consequences, but negative too. just like you said, if your toddler doesn't have a phone, telling everyone you're taking away phones really doesn't matter.
No,
One of the
no.
questions we got was around video games, and when the kids are not listening, the mom will take away video games, but they're not really fazed by it. So I think that's, we're kind of already answering that question is maybe that's not a great negative consequence for that child, because the child obviously doesn't seem to care.
Right. If it's not important to the child, if they won't care about it. Also, if you're always taking it away, after a while, if somebody was always taking something away from me, I'm not motivated. I know I'm going to lose it. It's just a given, so it's
Yeah.
not motivating me anymore. So that's why you have to think of, taking a small part. Maybe they're losing 15 minutes of that motivator versus the whole thing. Or maybe they're having to earn the motivator by doing good behavior. Clean your room, take out the trash, do this, and then you earn the video game. So
Right.
versus, I'm taking it away from you, you have to earn that thing.
Yeah. Well, and
Mm-hmm.
two, I think it's not always, maybe that's a good time to rethink. Am I always taking things away and never rewarding, and never,
Mm-hmm.
you know, rewarding for when good things are happening? So, talk about 4-1 a little bit, Bridget, and how that works into discipline.
Well, we use a 4-to-1 ratio when we're talking about praise. When we talk about for every one time I'm correcting a child, I find 4 other times to praise them, because praise is a powerful tool, a very powerful tool that is underrated. When I used to work in the schools, I would go in and teachers would say, "We have this little kid over here doing X, Y, and Z." And I'd say, "Okay, let's pump up that praise." And they were like, "What? What are you talking about?" And parents say the same thing. They have this problem and they think the first thing you should be doing is correcting it and finding that negative consequence is going to knock it right out of there. And that's not what you should do. You should start praising that kid 4 times for every one time you have to correct them. And what that happens is the kid begins to see themselves in a positive light. Begin to be encouraged by you finding even the smallest thing to praise them. And it kind of helps them perceive themselves as being more capable and praiseworthy, if you can use that kind of thinking there. So when I call a kid over, they ran through the house. I told them to stop running. They ran anyway, knocked over the vase. I say, come over here, John. And if they come to me, I say, good job. You came right away when I asked you. First thing I say, I kind of sandwich my correction between 2 big buns of praise or empathy, you know. So I am very positive with kids, even when I'm correcting them. Not in a, like, oh, you're so good, but I'm just pleasant and positive. So I praise you when you're doing something good, and I'm going to correct you when you're doing something not so good. So 4-to-1, and I kind of trick myself. For every one time the child is doing something wrong, 4 other times I'm praising them. As I put these little rubber bands on my wrist, okay, one black and the other ones are colored.
Hmm.
And so then when I correct the child, I'll put the black one on my non-dominant hand. And then within an hour, I need to get those other 4 on that non-dominant hand. That kind of tells me as a parent, am I finding good in this kid, or do I just look for the bad?
Yeah.
Holding
And
me
that's
accountable for.
huge when you're struggling with a child and you're really dealing with discipline. You can get so focused on the negative. So a good reminder like that, even if you're not hitting it 4 times, just having that reminder there to look for the good and to look for that opportunity to praise, I think is huge. It goes a long way towards a happier home.
Right. Even if you don't make the 4, you make 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe you don't make it at all, but you're looking for that. I'm looking for the opportunity. And sometimes I'm creating it just by calling the kid over to me or saying, look at me. And the kid looks up for a minute. I praise them for that. So I create the opportunity and don't just wait for it to happen. I'm looking to interact with kids all the time.
Yep. And I love that the praise is not for things like, oh, great job, you got an A on your test. That's obviously praiseworthy, but we're picking up on things that are not always, that the child doesn't necessarily even know that they're doing, but they are doing right because they're following, good social interaction rules. And praise can be so much more than I think what most people think it is.
I think it outweighs consequences. Because you can buy a gift for a kid and just throw it at them. Here's this toy I bought you. But if you sat down and played with them, okay, that brings you to that communication in there. And then if you praise them along the way, oh, that just elevates that whole experience, right? So definitely praise is this powerful, powerful, positive consequence that we sometimes forget about using, or we don't use it enough. And we praise kids at Boys Town for just attempting something. And some people say, well, why am I going to praise a kid for attempting it? It's actually they failed. Well, you want them to try again, right? So we're going to praise them just for the attempt. We're going to praise kids, when they make an improvement. You don't wait for a kid to get an A if they're getting an F. You're going to praise the D, the C, small steps toward the desired behavior. So we're constantly investing in praising children and finding those opportunities. And it really helps them to have that self-affirmation and that positive thinking. And then that really reduces their negative behavior when that happens.
So the answer to discipline is praise. Isn't that lovely?
Who would have thought it?
Yeah. Who would have thought it? All right, let's see. Here's a good one. I grounded my child and they snuck out to be with friends. What can I do? I bet you're going to talk about safety here, Bridget.
I'm sorry, say it again. I didn't hear you.
I bet you're going to talk about safety here.
Well, first things you want to make sure that your kids are safe. If they go out with, they sneak out to be with their friends, the first thing I do want to make sure is that they're safe, that they're, not in harm's way. So correction will be my second step to making sure that I've got my kid and that they're safe. Especially during this time of COVID, we don't want kids sneaking out and really talking to them about the seriousness of their behavior. Again, being a more proactive parent and talking about these things ahead of time is your best bet. When it does happen to you and a kid does sneak out, calm yourself. It's kind of like I say to parents all the time, it's kind of like when you're on a plane and the stewardess says to you, these little things are going to come down out of the ceiling that you need to put over your mouth, little air ventilators, and if we get in a crash, put it over your mouth first, and then you can help the person next to you. Same thing with parents. They should make sure they're calm before they hit the door running. Make sure, just take a little breath. It only takes a couple of seconds. Woosah. All right, now get on the phone, start calling people, find out where your kiddo is. Go get your kid in silence. Don't try to do that in the car. Have that argument. You can have all kind of accidents. Wait till you get home. If it's too late and you're still very upset, you can wait till the morning. It's not going away. It's that big white elephant that's in the house. It's going to need to be dealt with. So wait until you're calm enough to deal with it. Keep that kid safe, and then deal with those issues about why are they doing those behaviors and what's the price for making those decisions, and how can they problem solve better in the future using the SOTUS.
Yeah, and I think keeping it as a teaching moment too on what to do next time is good. But I think it's so funny that, you always know when you're in big trouble when you're a kid, when your parents are quiet, when they're putting that mask on first and there's that time of no speaking. It's terrifying as a child.
It is, isn't it?
It's not by the kids, but it helps them know the gravity of the situation, right?
I think so. And it helps parents to really operate from a teaching and a calmer spot and not make statements that they all want to take back or feel guilty about later. Let this be your kid's problem. They've made these decisions. You're going to be calm. You're going to follow through on it. There's going to be some discipline that needs to be had here. However, when I'm too upset, my best bet is not to say anything until I'm calm enough to say something that I want my kid to be able to remember that I said.
Very true. True. All right. Let's see. This is a good one. What resources does Boys Town offer if I feel disciplining my child is sometimes out of my control?
So many. It's just unreal. When I begin to think about all the resources that Boys Town has, it's just overwhelming sometimes. So first things first, going up to our Boys Town website and push on the little tag that says parents. Just push on that. And then they have a little section in there called Ask the Experts, and they have all these wonderful docs and specialists that are up there that can you can ask a question, it goes to that person, they can respond to you. We also have a wonderful newsletter that comes out every month with great articles. I get it. Lots of my trainers get those and learn a lot as a professional. So going up there, we have plenty of articles up there. Another great spot to go to is our Facebook. Oh gosh, we have the Facebook. You can talk to other people and see what's going on and just get more positive during these very kind of uncheery times. You just need that positive people giving their testimony about what they've gone through as parents or as professional or as kids for that matter. You can see you're not alone. We
Yeah.
also have the Boys Town hotline. Oh my gosh, I could just go on. I mean, the hotline is so great. They have things for kids that they can talk to other kids and talk to experts, and have things for parents. You can call anytime, day or night. They're always there for you. I could go on, but just go up to our site, start there, and then just keep going. We're always here for parents and for children.
And, boystown.org/CSP is how you can get into finding classes in your area for common sense parenting. And Boys Town's working on in 2021 coming out with a lot more virtual classes for families. So no matter where you are, you're going to be able to access classes and on a whole bunch of different topics. And actually right now on our Facebook page, and we'll add a link on the comments in here. Right now we're doing a survey of parents, kind of taking a beat of what are the things that parents are struggling with, what are the topics that they want to see us doing classes on, and what do they need the most help with. So help us help you, go fill that out and let us know where your biggest struggles are, and we'll create the content and the materials accordingly.
Yeah, I saw that, and I went up there and actually filled it out because I thought, oh, let me try this for my parents so I could tell them when we're having classes. It was so easy, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. So thanks for doing that, Susie. You guys, that was really great.
Only 8 questions, super simple, and we just really want to know what topics parents want more help with. We obviously know what we're hearing and what people are asking for, but there's a lot of people out there. So yes, give us feedback, would be much appreciated. Also appreciated, Bridget, is your time. Thank you for giving us such wonderful expertise on all things discipline. And I think the moral of the story today for me is, when things get bad and discipline gets hard, step 1 is look for the good, and then, set expectations, follow through, and the world will be a happier, your home at least will be a happier place, right?
Yes,
Is that
I too. Well, no, I agree with you. Our homes and our world can be a happier place when we look at discipline in a positive way, and that our discipline is purposeful, is practical, and that it is positive, that we look for the good. I agree with you. And I think that parents and kids are looking for that. We all want that. And so that's why we serve so many parents every year, just right here in our local area. I just wanted to mention too, Susie, that next year in 2021, there are going to be so many new classes and some free classes for parents. And I don't want them to miss out on that opportunity to be able to get into some of our free classes. And we'll also be serving our military. So we want to send out a special shout out to our military and let them know that we're here for them and that they can get into specialized classes just for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Bridget. Have a lovely evening, and we will talk with you next month. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.